In one of Rod Serling's early scripts for 1968's Planet of the Apes, not only did Taylor, the character played by Charlton Heston, discover that it was Earth all along, but he was fated to be shot and killed by a gorilla sniper. It's not a stretch to say that Heston probably would have preferred that ending to the one we got, because he really didn't want to be in the sequel. And watching it now, you can see why. Beneath the Planet of the Apes is arguably the worst movie in the original series of films, maybe even the worst in the whole franchise, and to this day, rumors persist that Heston was so fed up with the idea of the sequel that he insisted on being the one to end it all in perhaps the most fatalistic movie finale of all time, one that would all but ensure an end to any more sequels. While these rumors are not entirely true, and while the series somehow managed to escape the total destruction of planet Earth, it's important to look back at this wonky little entry and figure out how it all went wrong.
What happened? What could have happened?
The human Taylor has vanished inside the Forbidden Zone, where a mysterious threat waits to be discovered. Meanwhile, a new astronaut, Brent, has landed on the Planet of the Apes and is hot on Taylor's heels, only to discover that Ape City is amassing an army of gorillas to march into the Forbidden Zone and destroy the new unknown enemy. With a little help from Zira Cornelius and even Dr. Zaius, Brent and Nova must flee Ape City, find Taylor, and find a way to prevent a fanatical group of mutated freaks from triggering Doomsday.
Immediately after the success of Planet of the Apes, associate producer Mort Abrams met with producer Arthur P. Jacobs, Fox Vice President Richard Zanuck, and Fox executive Stan Goff so they could pat each other on the back. Goff reportedly then told Abrams that they needed to make a sequel, and after giving it some consideration, Abrams went to Arthur P. Jacobs with a story idea. From there, a follow-up was inevitable, and to do it justice, they first turned to Rod Serling. Serling offered a few different concepts, one involving time travel, another that ended with Taylor and a handful of other humans traveling to another planet, only to discover that it too is inhabited by civilized apes, and the last that dealt with Taylor and Nova going deep into the Forbidden Zone and encountering another ship that had followed Taylor's. These were all rejected, though that last one, which was actually the first one that Serling submitted, did wind up inspiring elements of the eventual final script. With Serling out, the producers then asked Pierre Boulle, the writer of the original novel, to come up with an idea of his own. Boulle's treatment, called Planet of the Men, had Taylor and Nova teaching a group of humans to overthrow their ape masters and reduce the apes to their primitive state. But this too was rejected for not being cinematic enough, though it did introduce the character of General Ursus. Mort Abrams then went to London and met with the poet-turned-screenwriter Paul Dane, most notable in film circles for co-writing the third Bond film, Goldfinger.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
With Abrams' help, Dane wrote a treatment called Planet of the Apes Revisited that is very close to the final film, albeit with Taylor as the main character, and with a different ending in which the mutants' bomb, which is just a regular nuclear bomb rather than a doomsday device, goes off. But Taylor and Nova escape to meet up with Zira and Cornelius to establish a new era of peace between apes and humans, culminating in the birth of a half-human, half-ape. The hybrid ape-man child was given serious consideration, there was even a makeup test, but ultimately it was dropped for fear of the implied bestiality costing the film its G rating. Abrams' general idea for the sequel was to forego trying to one-up the shocking twist of the first film, and instead focus on delivering a special effects bonanza, which is where the mutants and their illusion powers come in. This would prove to be the film's Achilles heel, though, when Fox slashed the budget in half from $5 to $2.5 million. The original film's director, Franklin Schaffner, was busy with Patton, so to direct the sequel, they brought in TV veteran Don Medford, but he walked away from the project after the budget was cut. Medford was replaced by another TV veteran in Ted Post. Post didn't love the script, didn't get along well with Mort Abrams, and nearly walked away from the project as well after Charlton Heston flat out refused to be in the film. This episode was voted on by my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to vote on future topics like this one, get early ad-free versions of my videos, or just wish to help keep this channel viable as YouTube ad revenue gets increasingly stingy and the copyright bots get increasingly hostile, please consider joining my Patreon or becoming a channel member. I'd like to give a special shout out to my $8 patrons: Batty Bat Firebrand, Chuck Poor, Diane McGill Davis, Don Quixote, Given Chumley DDF, Jack Blair, John Burrell, Mike O'Connor, Numinous 2019, Patrick Baker, Robert McGill, Sean Vale, Spoats, TB Schrammick, Tracy Rothmeyers, and Warren Davis. Thank you so much for your support. With the entire production in jeopardy, Charlton Heston had a one-on-one meeting with Richard Zanuck. There, the actor agreed to reprise his role as Taylor on the provision that he be killed in the opening scene. As the script was reworked to compensate, Heston compromised by agreeing to bookend the film, only working on it for a total of 8 days and donating his SAG minimum salary of $50,000 to his son's prep school. As cited by multiple sources, Heston would claim that the shocking ending in which he blows up the entire planet was his idea, though this is dubious considering that multiple endings were under consideration and that the idea of Taylor going out in a blaze of glory was present in several scripts prior to Heston's direct involvement. Other actors reprising their role from the previous film are Kim Hunter as Zira, Linda Harrison as Nova, and Maurice Evans as Dr. Zaius. Roddy McDowall was unavailable to appear as Cornelius, so they instead cast David Watson, who does such a good Roddy McDowall impression that most audiences didn't notice the change. For the new lead, Brent...
Taylor?
No, not Taylor. My name's Brent.
They considered Burt Reynolds, but chose TV veteran James Franciscus, in large part due to his resemblance to Charlton Heston. Franciscus took the role seriously, even helping to rewrite the script alongside director Ted Post to give his character more depth. After considering Orson Welles and Ernest Borgnine, they cast James Gregory as General Ursus, and for the mutants, they cast Paul Richards, Victor Buono, Don Pedro Colley, Gregory Sierra, and Arthur P. Jacobs' wife at the time, Natalie Trundy, in her first of 4 appearances in the franchise. Lastly, the great Paul Frees voices the closing narration.
A green and insignificant planet is now dead.
Filming on Beneath the Planet of the Apes began in February 1969. Due to Fox's extreme budget cuts, which affected all of the studio's productions at the time, a lot of the script's most ambitious ideas had to be scaled back or removed altogether. Luckily, the Ape City sets were still standing from the previous film, and the filmmakers were able to redress sets from Hello Dolly and the Time Tunnel, saving a ton of money. However, the budget crunch is more apparent in some of the stunt work. And in the lackluster visual effects, which were wonky even by 1970 standards. Even worse are the non-primary ape actors, who were given shoddy pullover masks rather than makeup. That said, the mutant makeup, which was toned down from some pretty grotesque early designs, is still a credit to makeup artist John Chambers. For the music, though Leonard Rosenman does his best, his score is nowhere near as good as Jerry Goldsmith's Academy Award-winning compositions for the original film. Goldsmith, like Schaffner, was busy working on Patton and couldn't come back for the sequel. Beneath the Planet of the Apes released in late May of 1970 to pretty poor reviews, but made a huge splash at the box office, earning nearly $14 million gross in its initial domestic run, with an additional $5 million when it was released as a double bill with the original. This was more than enough to justify another sequel, despite the seemingly unfollowable conclusion, and the producers were already working on one before Beneath had even hit theaters. Beneath the Planet of the Apes has since gained a reputation for being one of the weakest sequels, often competing with the last one, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, as the worst of the original series. Personally, I see a lot more to like about Battle than I do Beneath, but I can't dispute that Beneath was at least successful enough to launch an entire franchise. So why am I here asking why it failed? Because, honestly, it's not a very good movie, and it's a perfect example of how not to make a sequel. You guys know I like to stay positive on this channel, usually going out of my way to find good things to say about even the most indefensible of schlock, but as big a fan of the Planet of the Apes movies as I am, I can't find many good things to say about Beneath the Planet of the Apes. In almost every respect, it feels like a dollar store version of the original movie, and maybe you could blame that entirely on the budget, but I think multiple poor decisions contributed to the problem. For instance, poor James Franciscus was never going to stand out when they deliberately cast somebody who looks like Charlton Heston. No shade on Franciscus as an actor, but he's no Heston, and making the comparison so directly only cheapens the entire movie, especially when you put both actors on screen at the same time. Once Heston's Taylor re-enters the story in the third act, Franciscus's Brent becomes superfluous, a third wheel whose ultimate death is an afterthought. Combine that with a score that is similar to but not quite as good as the originals, effects and makeup that are notably worse, social commentary that is a lot less nuanced, and a plot built on wildly indefensible coincidences, and the movie begins to feel like a bad photocopy of its predecessor. On top of all that, it commits perhaps the biggest sin a movie like this can commit. It's boring. Nevertheless, the worst Planet of the Apes movie is still a Planet of the Apes movie, and any science fiction film from the 1970s with Charlton Heston in a starring role will always be a sci-fi classic. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What are some other examples of poorly executed sequels that nevertheless helped build a successful franchise? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll see that a ruthless businessman doesn't need a body to wreak havoc, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
If you are caught by the gorillas, you must remember one thing.
What's that?
Never to speak.
What the hell would I have to say to a gorilla?